The Vikings will take on the Lions. Tip of the cap to Frank Schwab, who a couple of months ago told you, hey, man, there's a real scenario that we could get in to the last week of the season. You called this. We could get into the last week of the season with two teams with only 2 losses, knowing that a third loss will force you to play on wild card weekend, and the winner of that game will get home field advantage throughout the playoffs. That's exactly where we are. Like, to be clear, for anyone waking up this morning that hasn't caught all the scores and hasn't caught the updates, because of the action today and because Minnesota beat Green Bay, a game we'll break down in a few minutes, because of that outcome, the Monday night game between the 49ers and Lions means absolutely nothing. If the Lions get beat 250-0, it won't change the fact that next weekend the Lions and the Vikings play. The winner gets home field advantage, the number 1 seed. The playoffs in the NFC will run through there, and the loser will have to play wild card weekend. That's wild.
I clear the lane real quick because I have to go through all of the kind of crazy tidbits about this Lions-Vikings matchup. We have a real possibility of setting a record for most wins for a wild card team. That is the 1999 Titans, 13 wins. We could, depending on what happens with the Lions tomorrow, we could have a situation of 14-2 play 14-2, losers a wild card and sets a record for most wins by a wild card team. I could not find this anywhere. Somebody probably has tweeted it by now. This has to be the most combined wins among 2 teams playing in the regular season in an NFL game. Like, this is going to be at least 27 wins between the two. I don't think we've had a matchup like this. I don't think we've had stakes like this for the Sunday night flex game at the regular season finale, where the winner gets 1 seed in the conference. The loser has to play on the road wildcard weekend. And look, there are some Super Bowls, maybe 10 to 12 Super Bowls, that have not been this good of a matchup in terms of the quality of teams. Like, I'm sorry, this game, especially with the stakes on the line, is better than the 49ers against the Chargers in January 1995, right? Like, these are 2 excellent football teams, both of which might go into this game 14-2, having the opportunity to be the 9th team in NFL history to get to 15 wins in a regular season. Just an unbelievable matchup. Now, what I want to talk about, Fitz, because we're talking about this before we started, I think what we need to talk about is Monday night, the Lions, as you said, play for nothing. Like, they win by 50, they lose by 210. Doesn't matter. You're playing for the 1 seed next week. You're going to be on short rest playing the Minnesota Vikings, who are an excellent football team. Is Dan Campbell going to rest his guys? I think any other coach in the NFL, we'd be like, okay, Monday night's going to stink because they're going to deactivate their 7 best players or whatnot. Dan Campbell's a wild man. Like, we all know, we make the jokes, right? Like, oh, Dan Campbell would spin on Price is Right if he got 95 cents on the first spin, all that kind of stuff. But this is serious now. Like, is he really going to play his guys in an absolutely meaningless game when you have the Vikings in 6 days, which is basically Super Bowl 58.5? Like, this is, whoever gets that 1 seed is 2 home games away from a Super Bowl. This is massive for this Lions franchise that's never been to a Super Bowl. If I'm a Lions fan, I'm just praying that somebody gets in Dan Campbell's ear and says, Dan, I know you have this reputation to uphold of always having the foot on the gas, and that's how we play, and that we live or die with that, but give your guys a rest. Don't get Amon-Ra St. Brown hurt in this game. Don't give Jahmyr Gibbs 30 touches in a game that really means nothing, and then he's kind of worn down for this regular season finale. If you remember back to last year, the Lions had nothing to play for in week 18, and Dan Campbell said, I don't care. I'm playing my guys. That's our style around here. We play guys, biting kneecaps and all that. Well, Sam Laporta almost suffered a major knee injury in that game. He was fine. He played in the playoffs, whatever, but it just shows the risk involved, and it shows Dan Campbell doesn't like sitting his guys in quote-unquote meaningless games. They're not meaningless to Dan Campbell. Does ownership, does Brad Holmes or GM go to Dan Campbell and say, look, dude, you got to sit guys? This is fascinating to me, Fitz, because this is one of those coaching decisions that literally we could be talking about 25 years from now. Remember when the Lions had their one chance to go to the Super Bowl, get the 1 seed? Well, they played Jahmyr Gibbs and he suffered a high ankle sprain and he couldn't play week 18 and they lost. Like, that's the type, I hope that doesn't happen. Obviously, I don't root for injuries. I'm just saying, sit your guys, Dan. This is your chance to make a Super Bowl. The Detroit Lions, Super Bowl 58.5 is coming up next Sunday night. I assume that's going to be flex. And just play for that, Dan. Don't be Dan Campbell for once here.
There's a moment too where you have to just sort of account for what else has happened. Like, we talk all the time about how analytics will give you a number, but they don't necessarily have the context of the feel of the game. Kind of like as you and I as degenerates, so, sometimes you can have hard and fast rules when you walk up to the blackjack table, but sometimes you just got to have a feel for how the table's going, right? if you are part of the Lions organization, do you not right now have a feel of what the injury bug has meant to this team this year?
That too.
You have been ravaged by injury. So you got to step back and say, hey, man, this hasn't been an easy year for us. And on top of that, you mentioned something I don't want to bury here. It's a short week. I mean, you're going to go into the biggest matchup of the year.
Yep.
Home field advantage on the line on a short week?
Yep.
I mean, all it takes is a couple of nasty hits in a football game and your body's just not feeling right. I'm with you 1,000% on this. Like, I understand that you have to have your identity as a franchise. You have to have the culture. The coach is the tone setter. All of these coach speak things that we say. That's fine. But at some point, you also have to have just a little bit of common sense. And a little bit of common sense here says, I don't want to go in to a game against my division rivals who are playing really well right now on a short week with one less day to prepare, one less day of rest for my body, all of those things that are going to be happening. I don't want to deal with that in this matchup when I understand that home field advantage is on the line. Like, the most important thing we've been saying for the last couple of years you could possibly get is a first-round bye in home field advantage. To let that go away because you want to have pride on a Monday Night Football game against the 49ers team that also has nothing to play for would be absolute
you're not
chaos.
you're not like screwing over the Los Angeles Rams because they need the 49ers to lose. The 49ers are already eliminated. This game, literally, has no bearing whatsoever in the NFC standings. And like you talked about, the stakes are so massive for this. Like, I'm not saying wildcard teams can't win a Super Bowl, right? We've seen teams come out of wildcard weekend, go to a Super Bowl. We've seen number one seeds fail. But if you're telling me door number one is you have 2 home games to make a Super Bowl, door number 2 is you're probably going to have to go on the road 3 straight times. You're probably going to have to play, I think it's the Buccaneers are angling towards that 4 seed. They're a dangerous team. We'll talk about them. And then you're going to have to go on the road again and again. And this is just, it's such an incredible edge to get that 1 seed. I think this is a massive decision for Dan Campbell. And you got Nick Bosa on the other side of the ball, chasing after Jared Goff. I don't want that in a game that means nothing to me. I understand that he's got this philosophy, but at some point, if every Lions fan has to be just praying that Dan Campbell sits his guys. This is just what you do. And I covered Mike Shanahan a long time ago when I was Broncos beat writer. And he had a game similar to this. It was at Green Bay. They had nothing to play for. He did not tell his players all week. He said, no, we're going to play this like normal. We're going to they get to 90 minutes before the game. And he says, no, actually, I'm sitting all my starters. I just wanted you guys to prepare all week. I didn't want you to get kind of lose that
Love
focus,
that.
right?
Don't want to lose the edge.
Didn't want to lose, but the Lions have already done that. They've prepared all week as if we might be playing for the NFC South title on Monday night. They've been in it. They've been very focused. It's the only thing you're taking away is, all right, Jared, Amon-Ra, Jameer, you're not playing. Sam, Laporta, you're not playing tonight. We're going to rest your legs. We're going to get ready for this Vikings game. But they're still mentally in it. So I think there's a perfect situation for him to sit his guys. It's what we're going to be talking about all week. If no matter what happens, I think that if Dan Campbell plays his guys, I honestly think Dan Campbell's going to play his guys. I think he's so stuck with this. This is my philosophy. That's why he goes for it on 4th down all the time. And he doesn't want to stray away from who the Detroit Lions are. And in a way, I get that and respect it. But like you said, there's caveats to everything. There's exemptions to everything. And I think there's a time when you just do the smart thing and rest your guy. It's almost a mini bye week, which is invaluable against a game against a really, really, really good Vikings team.
Well, and we got here because of that really good Vikings team that beat Green Bay 27-25 in a game that they were controlling for much of the game, and then Green Bay, to their credit, really came back. I mean, this was a big effort by Green Bay to get back into this football game. They had their shots. There was a headline on Yahoo that really made me think, and it was essentially breaking down that Green Bay's only lost to good teams, which is either a statement that Green Bay's really good or it's a statement that Green Bay can't beat really good teams. And I read that. I'm paraphrasing you here, but I read that, and it really hit me, Frank. You're right. At some point, Green Bay is going to have to figure out how to win these kinds of games because this game overall, by the end of it, came down to 3 or 4 plays. 3 or 4 plays that the Vikings were able to make that Green Bay wasn't able to make. And that's a theme this year when Green Bay takes on really good football teams.
Absolutely. And for people who don't know, the Packers have 5 losses this year. They're to the 13-3 Eagles. They lost twice to the 14-2 Vikings, and they lost twice to the 13-2 Lions. Now, that's great. You don't have any bad losses, but you also have not shown you can beat the top 3 teams in the NFC, which is kind of a problem come playoff time. You're going to have to beat a couple of those teams if you want to get to where you want to go. I thought And, you said, yes, it was a few plays, but at the same time, we've seen this from the Vikings before. It's a really weird thing that the Vikings have just let games go in the fourth quarter and let them get close when they shouldn't.
That's
For
fair.
3 quarters, this was just, the Packers got their behinds kicked. Like, this was absolutely all Vikings. Sam Darnold was awesome today, 377 yards. At one point on a Fox broadcast, they flashed. It was like, I'm going to be way off on the actual numbers, but it was like 420 yards for the Vikings and 180 for the Packers. They were getting dominated in this game. And then Love comes alive. They score a couple touchdowns. The Vikings need to close it out as they did. I looked at this as for three and a half quarters, this was the Vikings playing their best football. And that's what I take out of it. I don't take this away from as a close win in any way. This was a dominating win. The Vikings looked every bit as good as we think they are. And this really struck me. We're dabblers. We know this. So we pay attention to point spreads. Based on which sports book you prefer, the Vikings were either like a 1-point favorite in this game or a 1-point underdog. And I just kept thinking, what do the Vikings have to do to get some respect? They're 13-2. They're coming into this game having everything to play for, because if they lose, they open up the possibility of the Lions taking the division on Monday night. So they had motivation. They didn't have any major injuries. They already beat the Packers once this season. And they were a 1-point underdog at home at some books. Like, the Vikings are having one of the great seasons of all time. Again, I put out the stat before. Only 8 teams, including this year's Chiefs, have finished with 15 or more regular season wins. The Vikings have a chance to be one of those teams, get in that group. And yet we're still saying, well, this 11-4 Packers team that has no real great wins, we're going to make them a 1-point favorite in Minnesota? We're still so slow to come around to the fact that Sam Darnold's not going anywhere. This is who he is this season. Just a great season. Maybe he doesn't replicate it next year. Maybe he's Mark Rippon. I don't know, but I know this season he's great. They have an offense that could just run up and down the field on you with these playmakers. They have a defense that limited Jordan Love to 45 yards passing in the first half. And yet we're still sitting here saying, Vikings, I don't know. This team, by the time we talk next Sunday night, could be the 1 seed in the NFC looking at 2 home games to a Super Bowl. And yet I don't think, if you were to poll everybody and say, who do you think's going to win the Super Bowl? If you're not doing it in the state of Minnesota or maybe the Dakotas, you're not going to get many people to say the Vikings. I don't know why they don't get that respect.
Okay, a couple of things here. Number one, you're right. When I say it came down to a few plays, I mean by the time the game was over, it came down to a few plays. You're right. This was 27-10 at one point. Well, the reason the Vikings don't get respect, I think, is because we as a society don't like to change our mind. It's the same reason that people have been so slow to try and give any sort of level of love in media, particularly to Lamar, to Josh Allen. Like, once we come out and decide that the guy's not good, and I don't mean we as in you and I mean, once the narrative comes out and says, this quarterback's not good enough, boy, we don't like to turn that around at all. So the fact that it's Sam Darnold, who, by the way, 33 of 43 for 377, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. I don't even know that the numbers do it justice.
And also, he was good.
8 catches to Justin Jefferson, 5 to Naylor, 6 to Addison, 5 to Hawkinson. What's that tell you? Tells you he's spreading the ball around everywhere. Yep. Like, he does not lock on. He's got the greatest wide receiver in the league right now, and he doesn't lock onto him. That says so much about how well he's playing the position right now, that he is not Justin Jefferson dependent. We all sit here and say, well, he's not going to have, that line and Justin Jefferson wherever he goes next. That's fair. That's fair. But not every quarterback would be able to drop back and actually go through their reads instead of just saying, hey, big down. Like Jordan Addison has become a legitimate, consistent threat in the NFL because Sam Darnold is finding Jordan Addison. Like, this was a game where, frankly, I didn't feel like the Vikings necessarily ran the ball as efficiently as they wanted to, and it didn't matter. Like, at some point, the problem here is we don't want to turn around and admit what's right in front of us. What's right in front of us is that Sam Darnold is kicking ass this year. Sam Darnold is not good this year. He's not okay this year. He's not being coached this year. He is great this year. And at some point, we got to just step back and admit, like, hey, I don't care who Sam Darnold was last year. I don't care who Sam Darnold was with the Jets. I don't care what we thought about Sam Darnold coming out in the draft. None of that matters. Today, right now, with the Vikings, Sam Darnold is clearly playing well enough to dominate and win a Super Bowl. Like, there is no deficiency to what the Vikings do, including Sam Darnold. And the faster we admit that, the more we can start to enjoy this run.
I mean, I'll admit I was wrong. Like, go back to any of our shows in August, and I was saying, well, J.J. McCarthy is going to start by the end of September. Why? We've seen Sam Darnold. No, Sam Darnold has just changed who he is. He's doing a Rich Gannon almost. Like he got with the right coaches and the right team. And, we're going to talk about him a lot in the offseason, what comes next. But right now, this is perfect for him. And there's just, like you said, like Justin Jefferson, I don't think caught his first pass today until 6-7 minutes left to go in the first half. Like he wasn't even a big part of what they were doing. He was just spreading it around everywhere. And another L I'll take right now is we were on the show 2-3 weeks ago. Maybe it was one of the Wednesday shows. I don't know, whatever. And we were talking about how many Super Bowl contenders are there. And I said, in my mind, it's 4. It's 4 teams. You could pick these 2 from the AFC, these 2 from the NFC. And I didn't include the Vikings. And that's on me. Like, I'm one of these people who just refuses to give them any credit, who refuses to see what's right in front of my face. And that's a 14-2 team that there's no reason they can't go into Detroit and win next week and take that 1 seed. What more do they need to do other than just play great football, both sides of the ball, each and every week? This is a Super Bowl contender. They're a fantastic team. And we're going to look back, like there's a legitimate path here to us looking back in 10 years being like, yeah, that Vikings team that went 15-2 and they won the Super Bowl first time in franchise history. That was an all-time great team, wasn't it? Like the defense did this and Sam did this. But right now in the moment, nobody appreciates it. Nobody. Like people in Minnesota do. I think people are coming around to Minnesota. But again, this team was underdogs at home. A 13-2 team coming in was an underdog at home to a Packers team they'd already beaten. Like we're not giving them the proper respect, and we need to start because come next month when the playoffs start, they're a real factor. Even if they're a Walker team, they're a factor.
I mean, and let's be honest for a second. We have been bending over backwards to try and find any positive we can. Whenever Jordan Love does anything good, I feel like everybody turns around and is like, see, Jordan Love, that guy's going to be the future. Well, in this quarterback battle between Sam Darnold and Jordan Love, it wasn't even a fight. It wasn't even a battle.
Love had about a good 8 minutes.
Yeah, I mean.
That's about it. He was terrible for most of the game because the Vikings defense turned off his water.
Jordan Love has kind of been like a little up and down at times, right? Like we can't even admit that. We got to sit there. No. Jordan Love's going to be just fine. In the meantime, Sam Darnold has been absolutely the opposite of up and down. Like I just kept watching the game, and I love your Rich Gannon analogy. And I'll tell you what, it's not that they play the game similarly. It's that when Rich was at his best, for me as a Raiders fan watching it, the thing that he had was control in every situation. You just felt like he knew exactly what was in front of him, exactly what he was trying to do, and exactly how he was going to do it. That's how I felt today watching Sam Darnold absolutely rip apart a good Packers team. It was the control that he played the position with that I just kept watching it and thinking, this is what we should all be craving for quarterback play. And we've said this on Inside Coverage throughout the course of the season, but I will remind everybody, I believe that they have a fantastic head coach. I believe that they have a fantastic defensive coordinator that I don't think is going anywhere. And I think they have a fantastic offensive coordinator. Guess what? They got weapons everywhere. And Sam Darnold's 27 years old. Like it feels like we are witnessing the beginning of an era of dominance for the Vikings. And I just don't know why. Last year, when we witnessed the beginning of the era of true dominance of the Lions, the nation fell in love with it. Why are we not doing that now with a franchise that's equally desperate to have their moment, to equally desperate to get their Super Bowl? We sit here and talk about how painful it is to be a Lions fan and a Bills fan. Well, Vikings fans can rightfully say, hold my beer. What have I lived through? Like,
Gary Anderson,
let's add them to the list of teams we should be rooting for. My God.
It would be great to see them win a Super Bowl. It really would, because those fans have waited so long, and this one came out of nowhere, right? Like this team, like even the most optimistic Vikings fan, if you would have told them, hey, you're going to be 14-2 after you beat the Packers in week 17. That's like, come on, man. What are you talking about here? Like, this is just it's not maybe necessarily the 1999 Rams, but it's not that far off. Like this team has been awesome. They've been fun to watch. They play well in all phases. They can beat you in so many ways. And I think today, with what we saw for the first 3.5 quarters against the Packers, like I don't love that they let the Packers back in the game at the end. I get that. But for what we saw the first 3.5 quarters, I just kept looking and saying, the Packers are a good football team. They've won 11 games, and they're just getting housed right now. Like, Vikings are absolutely legit. They can beat anybody. They can. I don't know what their path is going to be once we get the seeds and stuff after next Sunday night, but the Vikings would beat anybody in a playoff field. There's no doubt in my mind.
All right, so let's get to the other game that had huge playoff implications. Sunday Night Football, Frank, lived up to the hype. It was a quarterback show. Second half, Jaden Daniels takes this game over, and really, time of possession. Like, it felt like Washington had the ball the entire second half. They get a crazy overtime win over Atlanta. And guess what? Washington, at this point, they sealed the deal. They're headed to the playoffs. Like, can we believe it? Frank Schwab's Washington Commanders have done the damn thing. They are in the dance.
Yeah, somebody might have predicted that they might be a playoff team this year. I just think that, there were MVP chants at the end, and I get it. Their fans are excited. I actually don't mind that conversation when it comes to Jaden Daniels. He's been that good this year. I don't think he's going to win, but I think he's played so well that if you want to lay out a reason for me why you think Jaden Daniels is MVP of the league, I'll listen to you. Like, it's not crazy. He has played that well. You forget that he's a rookie sometimes because he's just out there in overtime. Look, this is a rookie. Playing quarterback in the NFL is supposed to be hard your first year, right? They're in a situation where they can clinch a playoff berth with a win, a big pressure situation. Sunday Night Football. What does Jaden Daniels do when they win the coin toss in overtime? He goes 5 of 5 for 32 yards passing, runs for 40 yards, and just walks it off before Michael Penix can get the ball back. Like, Jaden Daniels has just been amazing. And I think, Fitz, as we go along with the season, there's a lot of storylines we'll remember, whether it's the Chiefs three-peat if they do, or the Lions winning their first, or the Vikings winning their first, or the Bills winning their first, whatever that shall be, right? But I think one of the enduring storylines of this season is going to be the 2024 draft class and where it fits historically. You can tell me a story right now where this draft class is better than 1983. And that's saying something because that's the gold standard, right? But we've seen 5 rookie quarterbacks play, and I think we're 5 of 5. There's some questions about Caleb Williams, I guess, but he's still shown a lot, and I think he's going to be fine in the future as we go along. Penix was the 5th one, and you just have to wonder, why didn't they go to this guy earlier? Like, I guess that's easy to say in hindsight, but man, I mean, the Falcons offense just looks different with him. And he has the look of a guy who's played a lot of ball. We talk about, it's only his second career start. Well, you know what? When you've started college football playoff games, when you started a college football playoff championship game, you've played a lot of big-time football. And you could just see that in Michael Penix. Like, they take over, they have, like you said, they didn't have the ball at all in the second half. They get it back needing a touchdown to tie it. Michael Penix completes multiple 4th down and long conversions. One 4th and 11 to Drake London for the first down, 1 4th and goal from the 13 to Kyle Pitts for a touchdown. And you just realize Michael Penix has no fear of this situation. He looks so polished and so good for being so early in his NFL career. I thought the story tonight was just the 2 rookie quarterbacks. These guys look great. Jaden Daniels obviously is already a star. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL already. Great game, great fun. Congrats to the Commanders for making the playoffs. And for the Falcons, look, they probably screwed up the NFC South. Like, they need the Buccaneers to lose to the Saints next week to have any chance. I don't think that's going to happen. But if you're Atlanta, what's the story? You're like, well, yeah, we might have missed the playoffs this year, but we're coming because this left-handed kid playing quarterback for us is pretty darn good.
If you're Washington, you made the playoffs. That's huge. But if you're Washington and you're a Commanders fan, take a second today. I've said this a few times. When's the last time that we found ourselves just talking about the football product of Washington? Think about everything that is different about Washington today than we saw a year ago. Think about everything that's different about Washington today than even 7, 8, 9 months ago. Washington is a completely different franchise. Jaden Daniels is a huge part of the why, but I think one of the coolest things that we're seeing here isn't just this, rise of Washington. It's a reminder that when you get it right, we saw this with Houston, now we see it with Washington. When you get it right with the right coach, the right coaching staffs, the right quarterback, the right everything aligns, all of a sudden what feels like a generation of just lost years of fandom suddenly turns around with one offseason when you get everything right. Like, this is a home run offseason that changes not only Washington right now being in the playoffs, but the fact that they are no longer viewed the same by the entire sports community in this process is as big a win as all of it. Like, congratulations to Commanders fans that have suffered through so much to get to where this is now.
I mean, you think about, obviously the NFL has its infatuation with the NFC East when it comes to primetime games. But next year, the Commanders are going to be maxed out, and for football reasons, because we want to watch this team. When was the last time we could say that? Like, RG3, that was so fleeting because he got hurt in the playoffs, right? Like, then it kind of unraveled from there. This ain't going anywhere, I don't think. I pray for Jaden Daniels' health, obviously. But if you think about it, like the great rookie seasons, we might remember one game, one moment, maybe 2, whatever. Think about Jaden Daniels' rookie season. We had that Monday night game against Cincinnati when he was nearly perfect, hit that unbelievable touchdown to McLaurin. The Hail Mary, one of the signature plays, really, of the NFL this century. Really, it's so great to beat the Bears. Last week, brings the Commanders back to beat the Eagles. 6 seconds left on a touchdown pass. And then tonight, a walk-off touchdown to clinch a playoff spot. That's 4 iconic moments for Jaden Daniels in his rookie season. Commanders, like you said, like the karma gods are getting him back, right? You cheered for this team, or maybe you stopped cheering for him for a while because you were so fed up with Daniel Snyder. Respect that, by the way. But now they're just being paid back in spades, right? Like, you're getting this awesome, remarkable ride of a rookie season for Jaden Daniels. You're going to the playoffs. You've had all these unbelievable nights, all these unbelievable wins you've had, and tonight was one of those. Look, just think about Fitz. I mean, really, truly think about the situation. It's 3rd and goal from the 2-yard line in overtime on Sunday Night Football. If you score a touchdown, you clinch a playoff spot. You're a rookie quarterback, and you're like, yep, here you go, Zach Ertz, walk us off. Like, the remarkable, calm, and collected nature of Jaden Daniels, which happens when you played so much big-time college football, won a Heisman Trophy, all that kind of stuff. It just shines through with this kid. He looks like he's 30 years old out there and been playing in the NFL for 8-10 years. Like, it just doesn't seem like anything bothers him whatsoever. He's so cool under pressure. Just fun. Like, Jaden Daniels, to me, when I think back on this NFL season, maybe the first thing I'll remember is just Jaden Daniels' excellence, and obviously the rest of the rookie quarterbacks too.
We've had fun breaking down the Sunday action that was good, but we're going to break it all down. We'll get to some of the games that maybe weren't as compelling, but there are still storylines to talk about. We'll do it after a quick break.
Introducing Daily Draw, the latest free-to-play game from Yahoo Sports. Daily Draw gives you a pack of 6 prediction cards every day based on the day's biggest sporting event. Download or update the Yahoo Sports app on the Apple App Store or Google Play and join the action with Daily Draw today.
Frank, I'm mad at myself. Mad at myself for how often I've come in and I've just championed on interviews when people ask about inside coverage. I'm like, oh, you got to check out the Sunday night show because we talk about every game. We won't leave a single game out because today's the day. Today's the day. We should.
We're not going to be talking about. We're not going to be talking about Saints Raiders very long. I guess there was some. I mean, they just look. It happens every year. You get to this point in the season and it's like these two teams have nothing to play for, and Cleveland and the Dolphins are playing in the rain, and 2 bad quarterbacks going at it. Yeah, this was, if you're a hardcore football fan, if you're in your fantasy football championship, you were watching closely, but mostly you were like, yeah, let's just fast. Can we just get to the playoffs already? Can we just dump some of these teams? Yeah.
Let's go back to Saturday where the magic started. We'll just presume at this point that you guys have already cut off on Christmas Day and Thursday. We're not going that far back for you in the misery, but we will go back to Saturday. The Chargers decimated the Patriots. This is significant because after all of the action that we've had, the Patriots now hold, as of today, with 1 week left in the draft, the first overall pick. And I'm not surprised by this. You're not surprised by this. We all knew that the Patriots had the worst roster in the NFL, right? So the worst roster in the NFL. I do believe that Drake May is going to be a good quarterback, but also I'd love to say that definitively, but my God, there's so much trash around him. Who knows? So right now, as of today, the Chargers, obviously they get a big win. They absolutely demolish them. But if you're a Patriots fan, you're finding hope in the fact that you have the first overall pick. If you're a Chargers fan, you're finding hope in the fact that, my God, like you are so far ahead of where anybody thought you would be 1 year in. Kudos to Harbaugh as the Chargers are now headed to the playoffs in his first year.
Whoever the Chargers get round 1 of the playoffs, they're going to look and be like, uh-oh, we don't really want to face this team. They're well coached. They got a good quarterback. Defense plays hard. Ladd McConkey has had an awesome rookie season. This was the Chargers, the best I've seen them play this year anyway. And they're a good football team. This is the best I've seen them play. I get the Patriots are very good, but this was just so thorough. And look, the Chargers are the type of team that through the years with their recent history, you put them on the road early, East Coast, Saturday, you'd be like, the Chargers are going to no-show for this thing. Nope, not under Jim Harbaugh. Like, he has changed the culture there in less than a year. It's really impressive. This Chargers team looks like it's prepared to win. Like, it's ready to win. And they're good. And they're going to, I think whoever they get in round 1 of the playoffs, it's going to be absolutely a tough out for even the Ravens, even whoever they get. Like, it's going to be, this Chargers team's good, and they're not going anywhere. They're the Chargers and Chiefs, and even we can put the Broncos in there too at some point, maybe. The Chiefs are just going to walk to 20 straight division titles. Like, this is the Chargers are going to be really good. They're going to have a good offseason, get more of Harbaugh's guys. This team's coming. The Patriots side, like, the Patriots are just a nightmare. And I say this a lot, and it is one of my things I kind of follow, that if I can't trust you to get the little things right, how can you get the big things right? And Jared Mayo, kind of defended him, saying, what do you expect out of this guy? You gave him the worst roster in the NFL to handle. Like, they're not going to win many games. Why are we talking about him being one and done? But something small that happened, Fitz. On Friday, like, you could connect the dots here. Friday, he has a production meeting, which in a production meeting, coaches are very kind of forthcoming and honest because they're not on camera or anything, to not be quoted, but they'll tell the announcing team certain things. And Ross Tucker, who did a great job, by the way, on NFL Network, and he explained that in that Friday meeting, Jared Mayo said, yes, we're starting Antonio Gibson at running back because of Ramondre Stevenson's fumbling issues. Ross Tucker reported this. It was reported elsewhere. Fantasy football people got oh, hey, let's get Antonio Gibson in our lineup. And then Ramondre Stevenson starts. And he doesn't even, and Jared Mayo was asked about it afterwards, and he's like, coach's decision. I'm not going to talk about it. And like, what? Like, did you change your mind over these 24 hours? Are you lying the production team to throw the Chargers off that Ramondre Stevenson is starting and not Antonio Gibson? It was just such kind of a red flag of just a dumb mistake or a dumb just situation. Like, I'm going to trust, like, I know I'm probably making it too big of a deal about it, but again, if you're doing wrong things with the small things, how can I trust you on the big things? And I'm turning a little bit on Jared Mayo and thinking maybe he ain't the guy. And not because he told the production team Antonio Gibson was going to start and he didn't, but there's been so many problems with this Patriots team that, yeah, they were competitive early in the season. They were competitive against the Bills 2 weeks ago, but a lot of this has been pretty ugly for the Patriots this year, even despite having the terrible roster they have.
Yeah, it's a long rebuild for them, and having the first overall pick in the draft, they'll sit there in what looks like, according to most mockers, the Travis Hunter hot seat. We'll see if that's where he ends up. But you mentioned the Broncos a minute ago. Interesting matchup against Cincinnati. Had a lot to play for in this one. I tweeted out, the irony of the Bengals season ending with a going to field goal in overtime because it looked like that's the way it was going to happen. But then what do you know? They found a way to get the ball back amazingly. And the Bengals win 30-24. Absolutely incredible. Now Denver has to beat Kansas City next week to ensure a playoff spot. And man, I don't know. I will say, again, Bo Nix, way ahead of schedule. The Broncos, way ahead of schedule. Much better football team than I expected them to be in this situation. But boy, did they need that win. Because now they're taking on at least the Chiefs team that has nothing to play for. So maybe the Chiefs won't have that level of killer instinct. But my God, if you're the Bengals, you're sitting back here saying, we're still alive in this thing. Yeah. And that's incredible to me that the Cincinnati Bengals are still somehow alive in this thing. I think the rest of the AFC is hoping somehow the Bengals don't get in.
And I say this often. I'm based in Colorado. I know a bunch of Broncos fans, obviously. I can't even tell you how crushed they would be if somehow the Chiefs beat them, the Bengals sneak in the back door, and the Broncos don't make the playoffs. They haven't made it since 2015. We all know that. Peyton Manning's last game was their last playoff game. Broncos fans would be crushed. I think this would be disheartening for the Broncos, even though they weren't expected to be in this situation. To get this close and not do it, that would be awful. Two coaching things really quick to talk about in this one. Zach Taylor should be sending Joe Burrow a bouquet of roses, because if Joe Burrow didn't bring that team back in overtime, we'd all be talking about Zach Taylor, because he absolutely flubbed the end of this game in regulation. They have Chase Brown running instead of just taking knees and kicking a field goal as time expires. Chase Brown gets hurt on a run when he's trying to slide down. They have to use a timeout. That changes their entire thinking. They're like, let's just sneak Joe Burrow in. The Broncos are like, thank you, take that. There's like a minute 24 left. Bo Nix takes him down, scores with 8 seconds left. And you're just like, Zach, what are you doing? How on earth do these NFL coaches screw up game management over and over and over? And then even in overtime, yes, Cade York doinks one in on a 33-yard attempt. And you're like, the Bengals are really going to lose this. What's really interesting to me is Sean Payton, if they get that last first down, do they take a knee and take a tie? Because football coaches don't do that. Football players don't do that. Nobody plays for a tie in the NFL, but yet that would have got the Broncos into playoffs. I'm fascinated by that scenario. But the one before that was Bo Nix throws a touchdown to Marvin Mims, 8 seconds left. Sean Payton didn't go for 2. And you had them on their heels. You're on the road. You're the underdog. I kind of get it from the aspect that Sean Payton said, look, the tie was a big component in this, that we make the playoffs with a tie. So I'm not just thinking about winning the game. I'm thinking about, well, if we get in overtime, we play to a tie, we get to the playoffs. So I give him a little bit of slack, but yet you look back and it's like, yeah, Sean probably should have just dialed up the 2-point conversion right there. So very interesting from a coaching thing. Joe Burrow's having one of those unbelievable seasons. If they make the playoffs, there is going to be some Burrow for MVP talk. T. Higgins was awesome in this game. If you had him in fantasy, congrats on your championship. So it was a really, really interesting game. And as you said, it boils down to the Bengals are still alive. And it's kind of crazy given where they were not just a few weeks ago, but like in the fourth quarter and overtime of this game on Saturday.
Yeah, I just keep sitting here thinking the thought of Joe Burrow sneaking into the playoffs and then watching Cincy go on a run, that defense still can't be trusted.
I don't think that could happen. Like, this is a team that needed every single break to beat the Broncos at home. Like, come on. Yeah. Like, you're not going to, like, everybody's talking about, like, oh, the Chiefs are going to tank so the Bengals don't get into the playoffs. Like, the Chiefs ain't worried about no Bengals. Come on. Like, I get there's history there and all that. This is a very, very, very flawed Bengals team. Like, there's a reason that they're struggling along and praying to make the playoffs. So let's not go overboard with the Bengals stuff. But yeah, like, if you get Joe Burrow in the playoffs, you're going to get 30 dropped on you probably because he's playing at that level.
Now, the Rams are the opposite. Their defense playing lights out. They beat Arizona 13-9, putting essentially putting the Cardinals season to death here at this point. They'd already had nothing to play for. But the Rams go out with the 13-9 win. The Rams, interesting note, 3-0 in their last 3 games, despite not scoring 20 points. Look, the Rams, as of this instant, and again, there's a lot of football left to go, have a pretty good playoff seed, right? And I'm just not sure they're a great team, but everybody's like, I wouldn't want to take on. Oh, okay. Let's be honest for a second. Stop thinking about the brands. Stop thinking about the coaches. Stop thinking about the past success and just look at the football we've seen this year. The Rams are going to the playoffs. Huzzah. That is better than most of us thought they'd be able to do. I'll give them a lot of credit for that. They are definitely having a better year than some of us thought they would. But let's not get it twisted and pretend that they belong even near the same conversation as, let's say, the Lions, the Vikings, the Eagles. We've been talking about through the course of this show already. So, like, congratulations to the Rams. I just don't think the Rams are a serious threat. It is yet to gel together in a way where I can look at it and say, okay, I get it. The Rams are taking everybody down.
Yeah, I mean, their offense just disappeared. It was just kind of weird, given that Puka is healthy, Kupp is healthy, Kyron's still healthy. You still have McVay, and yet they are really struggling to generate any points. Their offensive line hasn't played that well. Yes, until, like, I guess you could flip a switch and the offense comes back to life in the playoffs, but I can't depend on it. Like, whoever they get in the first round, I'm going to be like, yeah, you almost have to pick the other team just because right now I can't trust the Rams to score points.
That's crazy.
It is. It's weird, right? Like, we watched that Thursday night game against the Niners. We're all talking about the Niners and how they struggled in that 12-6 game and the conditions and all this. And it's like, no, that was kind of the sign that the Rams offense has just hit this weird slump that they can't get out
of. The Bills offense has not hit a slump. 40-14 over the Jets suck. The Jets were just a disaster in this game. Aaron Rodgers was a disaster in this game. Like, it's funny because all the good feels that we had a week ago where it's like, hey, you know what? People within the Jets organization want to see what A-Rod can do, right? Like, there's a little bit here. Let's see how it looks moving forward. Well, here's the clue. The Jets are a 4-12 team right now. They are who their record says they are. It's what they've earned in this process. They got absolutely just destroyed in this game. Aaron Rodgers finishes 12 of 18 for 112 yards. That's not a misspeak, with 2 interceptions, some ugly throws, some miscommunication where guys weren't anywhere near some of the balls that were being thrown. Like, this just felt like a team that was absolutely out of sync, out of whack, and didn't give a damn.
They were terrible. And it's against a Bills defense that was really, really struggling. Now, on the bright side of this, like, the Bills have to feel better about their defense today. Like, this Jets team had been moving the ball and playing pretty well, and they just shut them down. Like, this, when Aaron Rodgers left the game, they had 0 points. It looked like he might get shut out really for the first time in his career. Aaron Rodgers, the only time one of his teams got shut out was a late season game at Detroit where he suffered a concussion in the first quarter. This was like, it was shocking to see the Bills play that well against this Jets team, even though they're bad. That basically shut them out was pretty impressive. Now, we have to talk about it because it's contractually obligated at this point in the season. Josh Allen only had 182 yards passing. He only had 17 yards rushing. Like, we keep talking about MVP every week. The Bills pulled him in the fourth quarter. They're like, we're not going to pad his stats, and I get that, I respect it. But is Lamar the new favorite right now? Because the Bills have locked into the 2 seed. They got nothing to play for next week. I don't think Josh Allen's going to play, nor should he. Has Josh Allen done enough where it's just over? Like, there's my MVP resume. I'm going to win it. I don't know. It's been 2 straight quiet performances for him. Well, a lot of people are talking about Lamar Jackson chasing the passer rating record and all he's done. Where do you stand on the MVP after Allen he wasn't bad by any means. Like, he was fine in this game, but not the kind of game where you're like, okay, MVP race is over. I think it's very much alive for Lamar right now.
Look, I think Lamar should win the MVP at this point. I think, it's very close, and they're both great. And by the way, you can give one the MVP without sliding the other. I do believe that.
I agree that. I totally agree.
I'm just going to say this, though. We haven't gotten to this game yet, but you can't tell me today you weren't watching Saquon and thinking, okay. Like, to me, you want to talk MVP. You want to talk about the person that's absolutely changing the way the outcome of the game goes, the person that, hey, everything else has gone to hell. What are we going to do? When Tanner McKee is playing quarterback, I don't care who you're playing against. When you've got, Tanner McKee, who I can't, my draft prep kicked in immediately. A buddy was like, who is this guy? I'm like, guys, second-year player out of Stanford. I'm like, why do I still remember? I can't remember what night is trash night in my neighborhood, but I can remember Tanner McKee. But here's my point. What was the first thing that Tanner McKee did? Just played hot potato with the football, got it out of his hands to Saquon. And what did Saquon do when everybody knew? He still ran all over the place. Like, to me, I know why we're going to make one of these quarterbacks the MVP, and they're both very deserving. But the most valuable player that has changed the trajectory of the entire playoffs, it's changed the trajectory of the entire NFL with the way he's played this year, is Saquon.
Interesting.
I know we don't give it to running backs, but to me, you take Saquon off the Eagles are losing 3 more games easy. Like, you take Saquon off the Eagles, we're not sitting here saying the same things about our panic of, oh my God, what if the NFC had gone through Philadelphia? You take Saquon off the Eagles, they are a totally different football team. Now, that's always the case for quarterbacks. I understand that, but man, I think what we're seeing at the running back position this year is particularly special from Saquon.
It is. So a question for you, philosophical question. Eagles have the 2 seed locked up. They get the Giants at week 18. Saquon Barkley needs 101 yards to beat Eric Dickerson's record. What do you do? Do you try to let Saquon get the record, knowing you got to play a playoff game the next week? The bigger goal is Super Bowl. It's not Eric Dickerson's record, but yet we always say, like, oh, that doesn't matter. All that matters is Super Bowl. No, records matter. Your place in the history of the game matters. 21,005 yards matters, and beating that would matter. What do you do? What do you do if you're Nick Sirianni? I don't know. I seriously don't know the answer to that.
I think Nick Sirianni goes to Saquon and says, what do you want, brother? If you want the record, we'll get you the record. You
and
don't want the record?
Saquon would say no. I think, because remember that mic'd up clip? There's a mic'd up clip.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Right. Yeah. He's sitting on the bench or playing the Giants. And I believe it was like his career high or an Eagles. I can't remember the exact record, but Saquon had a shot at it against his old team, the Giants. And he's mic'd up, and Sirianni goes up to him and says, hey, here's the deal. We can put you back in the game and you can try to get this record. And Saquon said, no, let the young guys eat. Like, it's their time. I don't care about that record. But that's not Eric Dickerson's 1984 record either. That's one of the iconic NFL records. So I don't think Saquon would say I want it, but I don't know.
But
I wouldn't blame him if he does.
There are going to be plenty of people. Eric Dickerson's already come out and been like, well, he had 17 games to do it.
Sure.
No,
that's true.
So yeah. I don't know. But I hear you on that. By the way, we're going to count this as our conversation of that trash.
Yeah, I'm talking about the Eagles. Good job, Kenny Pickett. Good job, Tanner McKee. Yeah. To win that dominantly without Jalen was really impressive. Okay,
Did you see the tush push? Kenny Pickett got a tush push for a touchdown.
The last play of the second half. I thought it was,
Kenny Pickett can tush push. Like, what do we? I will ask you this, though, about this game, putting a bow on it. Was this, because we were like, hey, has McCarthy been able to get himself back into the running to keep this job? Did this put the taste in the mouth for Jerry Jones that gets, because I kept thinking, man, this is your rival kicking your ass. And Jerry Jones is sitting there saying, man, if this had been a close game, I wonder if it would have been enough to save McCarthy. You lose 41-7 in a game that felt like it could have been 70-7.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Against
I know they're decimated. I get why.
A third-string quarterback at the end. I get it.
You can't even say we didn't have our quarterback, because it's like, well, neither did they.
They didn't even have their second stringer for the second half. Like, most of the second half, after Pickett took a hard shot from Micah Parsons. I don't think it looks great on McCarthy, but I think, honestly, if I had to guess, I think Jerry's made up his mind and he's bringing back McCarthy. Like, if McCarthy wants to come back, we've talked about that. I don't think one game should change that. Like, I just don't. Like you can't just go week by week, and whatever that week's result is, that's firing my coach. That's not. Either you got the guy or you don't. And I kind of, based on just what Jerry has said, I think he wants McCarthy back. But you're right. Like, going out and laying this egg, like I talked about Jared Mayo, with them looking absolutely lost on a Saturday morning against the New England, or Saturday afternoon, it's morning for me. Saturday afternoon against the Los Angeles Chargers doesn't look good on Jared Mayo, and might change your mind on how it looks. Like, same for McCarthy. They were dreadful in this game. It's always possible.
Real quick, one more just dog game, but I enjoyed it. My beloved Raiders won 25-10 over New Orleans. I thought the Raiders would get a win here, especially after the way they played last week. Of significance here, Brock Bowers broke Mike Ditka's receiving yards by a rookie tight end record, which, by the way, he did in 16 games because he didn't need the extra game to do it. Brock Bowers also set the franchise record for the Raiders for most receptions in a season. Think about that. Over the Jerry Rices and Tim Browns and everybody else, the Fred Biletnikovs, obviously different era, but the receiving record for most catches in a season now belongs to Brock Bowers. He has essentially set every single record. And I understand why Jaden Daniels is going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year because he's Jaden Daniels. I don't think you can convince me that Brock Bowers doesn't deserve that award every bit as much. He has done what he's done on a pitiful football team that hasn't won a lot of football games, and he's done what he's done with quarterbacks that are absolutely an embarrassment playing the game. He's done what he's done with no other weapons around him to help. He's done what he's done with a coach that may be one and done. When you start talking about everything that Brock Bowers has had to lift through to get to where he is, I know I'm a homer. I know I'm biased, but I also know that I am seeing one of the greatest seasons I've ever seen from a player on my favorite team. And to me, Brock Bowers and what he's done, setting the records and what he's done, impacting the games, the way he's done it, the way he's gone about his business, and what he's had to persevere through to get there with the players that are around him that just aren't good. I think Brock Bowers is the Offensive Rookie of the Year.
He has an argument. I mean, obviously it's going to be Daniels. I think it should be Daniels. Daniels has been unbelievable. But Bowers, I mean, this is one of the great rookie seasons of all time. They put up his stat line at the end of the game, and it was like, you just see it all in front of you, and you're like, 108 catches and all these yards, and like, wow, for a rookie tight end, a position that's really, really hard. And you know what I thought back to, Fitz? I thought back to draft night. And leading up to the draft, I was like, oh, you can't pick a tight end top 5, blah, blah, blah. And so he falls all the way to 12 or 13, obviously, because the next was 12. He falls to 13, and now we look back and we say, what were some of these teams in the top 12 doing? Like, I get the quarterbacks, like those guys going, but the Jets, everybody had Brock Bowers going to the Jets. Like, Fashanu is going to be a good player for them. I get that, but Brock Bowers, there's a reason he's the only 2-time Mackey Award winner. He's a heck of a football player, and a lot of those teams in the top 12 could have used him. Absolutely. And the Raiders, like, it wasn't ideal for them. They wanted a quarterback in that draft, but they said, like, as we've talked about, hey, who's the best player? It's Brock Bowers. Let's take him. It doesn't matter. We got Michael Mayer. It's just Brock Bowers is a special talent, and he has been, and he's fantastic, and he's been fantastic all year. And he was the one shining spot in this awful football game that at least your team won. Like, that's nice for you.
You were sitting next to me on that draft broadcast as I was getting blown up, and everybody was immediately saying, why would the Raiders take a player that's not a position in need? And I said to you then, I said to C-Rob, I said to the world on our show, I will never apologize for my favorite team taking clearly the best player on the board. And when you need talent, you go get talent. Guess what the Raiders did? They went out and took the best player available. And for everybody that's sitting here, Giants fans, I was sitting next to Giants fans in the bar that were absolutely apoplectic, losing their minds as they watched the Giants win that football game because of what it means for the draft. I will just tell you, as Tankathon sits right now, the Raiders would pick 8th in this year's draft. And you know what? This is a tough thing. I know when you need a quarterback and you're desperate for a quarterback, everybody wants a quarterback. You know what I'd rather see? Instead of reaching at a quarterback that you don't believe in, if they don't believe in either, just go best player available and keep making your entire damn team better. Because that worked last year. The draft board didn't fall to them the way they wanted. They went best player available, and it absolutely worked. So, maybe when we're hanging out together this year during the draft, I'll be celebrating again. We're going to break down the rest of this just glorious slate. I promise there were a couple of impactful games. We'll do that, but first we're going to take a quick break. All right, Frank, speaking of the Giants fans, Giants 45-33. Okay, a lot here. The Giants went from the first overall pick in the draft. Giants fans know that. According to Tankathon, they sit 3rd now behind New England and Tennessee. They'd still be in prime position.
I believe Cleveland as well. Tankathon has Cleveland 3 right now.
Tankathon has... I have it up as... Oh, you're right. You are right. I stand corrected. I must not have refreshed it.
So the Giants lost the draft spot, as you said, as Sandra talked about it. Like,
what happened.
Just bad day for Giants fans. Yeah.
So Tennessee and Cleveland now both sit ahead of the Giants. So we'll see what that means. There's a lot of football. A week is still a long time, and then the entire offseason to figure it out. So Giants fans losing their mind. I walked away from this more thinking, are they going to clean house in Indy? Like,
oh, man. Yeah.
If you're Shane Steichen, this year's been an epic fail. If you're Chris Ballard, this roster is not good enough. Like, I just, where we are in the Colts today is far different than where we were on the Colts a year ago right now.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the Giants side of this first, because we had a great discussion last week about the Raiders winning and quote unquote screwing up getting the first pick of the draft. You made great points that, there's no sure thing at the number one overall pick, especially this year. I don't think Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, as long as Cam Ward doesn't bounce at halftime again or anything like that. Like, I don't think these guys are franchise. Like, they could be franchise quarterbacks, but they're no sure things. We know that. But I'll say this. You're the Giants. You're trying to draft a quarterback. You at least want your pick of the litter, right? You want to at least, for 4 months, look at Cam Ward, look at Shedeur Sanders, meet with these guys. No, we control this. We want to figure out who we want, who fits us better. They lost that. And, if you're picking fourth, I think Tennessee takes a quarterback, right? Like Will Levis coming back as their quarterback. Cleveland, maybe. I don't know. But there's going to be a lot of teams, including maybe your Raiders, calling to number one in the Patriots, calling to number 3 in the Browns. Now, this could change next week, too. These teams could win. We could be having a different discussion next week. But I think teams, it's not going to cost you as much to move up to the first pick as it has in recent years, because there isn't a Bryce Young. It was a great prospect at one point. There isn't a Bryce Young. There isn't a Caleb Williams type of player. I don't think it's going to cost you so much that it just ruins you to trade up and draft to get the first pick and draft a Cam Ward, draft a Shedeur Sanders. So I think now the Giants have to worry, are we going to get either of these guys? Not just not picking between them. Are we going to get a quarterback at all? And then you're kind of back in this purgatory. So I get the angst from Giants fans here. Like that.
Yeah, but just because you need a quarterback, hey, what if the Giants don't believe in either of these guys? I keep screaming.
But what if they only believe in one, Fitz? What if you get through the process and you're like, Shedeur is awesome, Cam Ward we don't trust. Shedeur goes number 2 and Cam Ward falls at 4. You're like, well, remember that day when we scored 45 against the Colts? We wouldn't be in this situation. Like,
fair, but like,
and I get what you're saying too, that there's no such thing. But I think if you're the Giants, like, it would have felt a lot better, at least having the option of, hey, we control this. We'll do what we want. We'll figure that out by the end of April. They don't have that anymore, and they might not get either of those guys.
Well, and I'll just remind Giants fans quickly, in case you didn't hear me say this last week. Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott. I'm listing off the big-name quarterbacks that most people believe are high-quality quarterbacks in the league. Other than Joe Burrow. When I say quarterbacks you're afraid of in the NFL right now, other than Joe Burrow, how many of them were drafted number 1 overall? Like, it's about finding the right guys. I get that. I get that 100%. So we've had this debate repeatedly. Giants fans, I would just say that there's still hope. There's still hope. Also, what I don't want to do, I will tell everybody, if you're sitting here saying, well, we're just going to trade up and get a quarterback. Boy, if you're giving up future equity for that quarterback, then you better love him. Like, you better love. But
desperation takes over. At some point, these GMs are like, oh, if I don't get a quarterback and win right away, if there's no hope by the end of the year, I'm getting fired anyway. Those draft picks ain't going to be mine. So let's talk about the Colts real quick, because I do think
Anthony Richardson, by the way, first-round draft pick. Anthony Richardson may not even ever, never be a reliable starter. But, yeah, that's part of why the Colts are where they are.
The Colts still technically alive for the playoffs coming into today. And you give up 45 to the Giants? Are you kidding me? Like, the Giants haven't even scored 30 all year, and they score 45, and Malik Neighbors is still running through their secondary. Like, this was embarrassing. Like, everything about this loss by the Colts was an absolute embarrassment. We just talked about, like, you don't want to have every game be a referendum on your coaching staff or anything, but when you lose like this, I think it is eye-opening for Jim Irsay to be like, we had a shot at the playoffs. The Giants are just the worst team in football by far the last 10 weeks. And we just get kind of boat raced by them. I get the Colts are kind of in it as far as the score goes, but the Giants controlled this game. As crazy as that sounds to say, they took it to the Colts in this game for the most part. Embarrassing loss. And yes, I think you have to reevaluate everything. I'm not saying to fire Steichen or fire Ballard just because of this loss, but I think you have to at least reevaluate everything, because this loss was that bad. This was really, really poor effort by the Colts. I was stunned by this. Like, I was just stunned to watch the Giants be the superior team on the field against a Colts team that still had playoff hopes alive when they kicked off.
All right, so let's get to the game that really was the most riveting of the day. Mac Jones and the Jags beat Mason Rudolph and the Titans, and I'll just tell you, like, we have to talk about every game, so I'll just remind everybody, Brian Thomas Jr. is really good. Like, really, you want to talk about wide receivers. Marvin Harrison Jr. has not been who we thought Marvin Harrison Jr. would be this year. Brian Thomas Jr. has been great for the Jags. So kudos for the Jags for getting a win against just the the piss poor Titans.
Yeah, and I'll say again, like I've said this about the Titans a lot, and I'm not trying to just dump on Brian Callahan, but what in Brian Callahan's first year leads you to believe year 2 is going to be any better? There's been no hope. There's no hope with the Titans right now. They're awful. Maybe their hope is that they got the second pick of the draft and they love one of these quarterbacks, but I don't know. This Titans team is really bad, and if I don't think they're going to fire Brian Callahan, but if they do, I'd be like, I kind of get it. Like, they've been awful. You lose to that Jaguars team, ugh, like, come on. Like, this has just been a nightmare for the Titans all year long.
Speaking of nightmares, that would describe the Dolphins-Browns game. The Dolphins won 20-3, and we were reminded yet again that depth at the quarterback position across the NFL has been tested. I'm just going to say it nicely. It's been tested. I don't think most of us signed up for Tyler Huntley taking on Dorian Thompson-Robinson, but that's what we got. I don't know what was more shocking. By the way, Huntley wasn't terrible. 22 and 26 in this game. He actually played pretty well. But DTR, DTR throwing the ball 47 times could not have been anybody's plan.
No. I keep hearing the phrase, they got to get a look at DTR. You know what? We've looked at DTR. We've looked at. I've looked. I've seen. I know. Like, that. What are we doing now? So yeah, I am. Here's the people who I want to give a shout out to. All the Browns fans who sat through the rain in late December in Cleveland watching this game. You, sir and ma'am, are a diehard fan. I commend you. You're never getting those hours of your life back. So I'm sorry. That is a rough way to spend a Sunday afternoon. But yeah, the Dolphins still stay alive somehow. At least they did something. They've been an offensive wreck without Tua all year. Mike McDaniel getting a lot of heat for that. They actually were functional today. So I guess kudos for that. But yeah, not a pretty game in any way.
I did save this one for last because the score didn't matter, but maybe the team does. Tampa Bay beats Carolina 48-14. Takes away all the good feels that we were having for the Panthers lately. This was just a thorough drubbing. But, man, I'm watching Baker play. We were talking earlier about control. Like, Baker right now is just – he's hot. He's on a heater. And when you got a guy that's playing as well as he is right now, I'm looking at that saying Tampa Bay is scarier than they're getting credit for being.
Absolutely. I wouldn't want to play them first round of playoffs. You know how many touchdowns Baker Mayfield has this year? I didn't know this before today. 39. That's Kurt Warner 1999 type of stuff. Like, he has been awesome this year. I didn't need to know 39 touchdowns had always been awesome this year. It was just kind of an eye-popping stat. He threw 5 more today. Without Chris Godwin for most of the year, by the way. Without Mike Evans for most of the year, by the way. Baker Mayfield is so good. He's probably going to get 2 straight offensive coordinators head coaching jobs. Last year, Dave Canales gets the job. He gets the Carolina Panthers job. Liam Cohen's getting a job somewhere based on how well Baker Mayfield has played. It's another great story. We've talked about Sam Darnold a lot. We should be talking more about Baker Mayfield, who took a bargain basement deal with the Buccaneers last year just because they were basically the only team that was going to give him a chance to start. He just has run with that since. I mean, he's going to have 40 touchdowns by the end of this year. One of the great, like, there are not many people in that club that have had 40 touchdowns in a season. He's going to get there. And yes, whoever plays the Buccaneers in the first round, I don't want to go face them. It's a good, sound football team and led by their quarterback, who's just had this really amazing career revival.
No matter the why, think about this for a second. Although there's context to why, I'll remind everybody. Jared Goff, Matt Stafford, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield. Those are 4 quarterbacks that the original drafting organization let walk out the door that then found the exact tandem that they needed with the right coach, the right way to get the right result that has led to greatness for all 4 of them and for their respective franchises. Now, obviously the Lions-Rams trade, there's a little bit of nuance to that, but I just look at this as much as we sit here and we want to give up on quarterbacks that stink. It's just sort of a reminder that, you know, there is something to finding the person that has the tools and putting them with the coach that knows how to maximize those tools. Just four quarterbacks that are all on playoff caliber football teams that are all just absolutely significant to the current NFL market that were all let walk away from their original drafting teams.
And I think with Baker's case, like, you know, you talked about getting him with the right coach. What does it say about him that he's done this with 2 different offensive coaches in Tampa Bay? Like, both of those guys are good, obviously, Canales, Cohen, whatever. But who's the common thread here? It's not just Kevin O'Connell getting the most out of Sam Darnold. This is Baker Mayfield saying, Dave Canales, I'm going to have a great year with you. And then we're going to change. Liam Cohen's going to come on. I'm going to have a great year with you. And you're going to go get a head coaching job. And probably whoever the offensive coordinator is next year, probably going to have a great season with Baker Mayfield, and we're going to give the offensive coordinator so much credit because I guess we're slow to come around to the fact that Baker Mayfield's an elite quarterback now.
All right, so Monday Night Football, Detroit at San Francisco. Detroit favored by 3.5. We would usually do a big breakdown of the game here. I think that's a little disingenuous because right now we don't know how that game's going to look. So I think this is one of those games that, for me, frankly, if I was sitting around trying to figure out if I was going to put cash on it, the answer would be no, don't do it. If I was standing next to Frank at the sports book, I would say, Frank, don't do it. We don't know who's going to play, how long they're going to play. We don't know if it's for one drive. San Francisco has nothing to play for. These are dangerous games to try and predict the outcome of because we have no idea who's going to play and we have no idea what the game script is going to be.
And if we were standing next to each other in a sports book, I would say, let's go get a shot and a drink and go to the craps table. But that's a story for another day, I guess. And
I would say yes.
I believe the 49ers are going to win this game just because the Lions aren't going to have a ton of motivation. But yes, the key here, what we'll be talking about for a long, long time is what does Dan Campbell do with his starters? I'm fascinated to see it.
Yeah, we will keep our eye on that as always. And in the meantime, don't forget, we're still with you. We are coming at you next Sunday. It's the last Sunday of the regular season. I cannot believe we've already gone through this much football. We can never do it without Stone behind the scenes. He absolutely keeps us in line. He's the real man on the show. We're just sort of the puppets. We're the pretty puppets. That should be our new band name, the Pretty Puppets. I don't know. Follow us on Twitter at Jason Fitz at Yahoo Schwab. If you've listened this far, be sure to rate, review, subscribe. It means a lot to what we're trying to accomplish here. And tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell everybody to hang out with us all the time. No show Wednesday. It's New Year's Day, but we'll be back Friday with Jory. As always, thanks for hanging out with us. Happy holidays. I hope everybody had an amazing holiday season. Hope your New Year's is safe. Be smart. Don't get in a car if you shouldn't get in a car, okay? Just be smart, be safe so that we can all spend Friday hanging out talking about football. Thanks so much for listening.